Welcome to True Crime Audio Pod, where we unravel the threads of the most disturbing true crime stories. Today's story, Jessica Manners, a young life cut short in Setauket, a suspect shrouded in deception, and a verdict that left a town divided. On Easter Sunday, March 26, 1989, the weather on Long Island was clear, cool, and bright. In Poquot, a peaceful part of the East Setauket community on Long Island Sound, Lawrence Perkins experienced a morning that would profoundly impact his life. He left his home just after 8 a.m., intending to leisurely walk to the local delicatessen. His plan was to buy bagels and cream cheese for his family's breakfast and to indulge in his routine of reading the New York Sunday news. His path to the store led him past the Dyer's Neck section, an area known for its picturesque stretch of rocky shore along the sheltered Setauket harbor of Long Island Sound. As he walked, Perkins noticed something unusual at the water's edge. He slowed down, attempting to discern what it was. Initially, he thought the object resembled a mannequin that had possibly washed ashore. Perkins kept his subsequent thoughts to himself for almost the next hour. After completing his purchases, he headed home, passing the harbor edge again. This time, he took a closer look at what he had earlier believed to be a mannequin. Upon closer inspection, Perkins realized that the object was not a mannequin, but a dead body. The deceased body found by Lawrence Perkins was located on the rocky embankment of the shore, approximately 5 feet from the water and 10 feet from Shore Road. Perkins, standing on the road, was struck with horror upon realizing the true nature of his discovery. The body was that of a nude woman, lying face down and perpendicular to the road, her head turned to the right, facing the water. At this moment, Perkins heard the sound of children's voices, a dog barking, and a couple talking. A family, unknown to Perkins, was approaching for a Sunday morning walk. Perkins, driven by an urgent concern to protect the children from the horrifying sight, abandoned his groceries and newspaper on the road and ran towards the family, waving his arms and shouting for them not to come any closer. The family, initially perplexed by Perkins' frantic behavior and his warnings of a corpse, continued their walk, dismissing his actions. The educator among them later remarked that they thought Perkins was acting irrationally. However, upon eventually seeing the body, the family reacted with shock, mirroring Perkins' earlier reaction. The educator instructed his wife to take the children to the nearest house and call the police, while he and Perkins guarded the scene. Shortly after, a patrol car from the Suffolk County Police Department arrived, sirens blaring and lights flashing. The patrolman, upon seeing the body, quickly returned to his vehicle to report the situation to the police headquarters in Yaphank, confirming the presence of a deceased individual at the water's edge off Shore Road in Dyer's Neck. Detective Sergeant William Pepper and Detective Joseph White led the investigation at the scene where Lawrence Perkins discovered a dead body. Their official observations of the body included several notable details. The victim's eyes and mouth were open, her bra was tangled beneath her arm, deep scratches were found along her sides, bruises covered her back, and brown seagrass was adhered to her legs. Following these observations, the body was removed from the scene. Additional resources were summoned, including the police department's mobile crime laboratory and a medical examiner. As the area was cordoned off with yellow tape to keep the public at bay, an unrelated yet significant discovery occurred 2 miles away in Setauket. An elderly man, wandering along Jeffrey Lane, found several items of clothing in the middle of the road, presumably discarded by a motorist. The clothing, which included blue sweatpants, white socks, and white high-top sneakers, was initially taken home by the man. However, his daughter advised him to return the items, leading him to place them near a fence closest to where they were found, between 10 o'clock and 10:30 a.m. The police were not informed of this find until Tuesday morning. Back at the crime scene, an assistant medical examiner's preliminary analysis suggested that the young woman had likely died from strangulation. Detective Lieutenant John Jirash communicated to reporters that the location and condition of the body were consistent with the possibility that she had been killed elsewhere and then left at the site. That was an astute observation, as time and the events to follow would prove. But for now, one puzzling question in this strange homicide case bothered the investigators. Who was the victim? The limited information the police initially had about the deceased girl included observations of her physical injuries and estimations about her age, height, and weight. She appeared to be a young female, likely in her mid-teens, about 5'1" in height, and weighing approximately 100 pounds. A significant development occurred at 2 p.m. on the day the body was discovered. A woman called the SCPD's 6th Precinct in Coram, reporting her 14-year-old daughter, Jessica Manners, as missing and seeking police assistance to locate her. The woman described the events leading up to her daughter's disappearance. On the evening of Holy Saturday, Jessica and a friend were taken to the Comac roller rink by a family member and picked up around 11 p.m. After dropping off her friend in Setauket, Jessica returned to her family's home in Stony Brook. There, she spent some time in the living room eating potato chips and watching rock videos on TV, while her parents and siblings went to bed. The next morning, Jessica's mother, who had woken up early to prepare for Easter, discovered to her shock that Jessica's bed was untouched and there was no indication of her presence in the house. This discovery led her to question whether Jessica might have left the house. Despite the front door being locked from the inside, the mother noticed that a window in Jessica's room, usually locked, was unlocked. The mother speculated whether Jessica could have sneaked out through the window after everyone had gone to sleep. This hypothesis was later shared by the police when they began investigating at Jessica's home. The call from Jessica's mother was a crucial lead for the authorities, linking the body found at the edge of Setauket Harbor with the missing 14-year-old girl. By 5 p.m., any lingering doubt about the connection between the dead body found and the missing girl, Jessica Manners, was dispelled. Only 3 hours after Jessica was reported missing, 2 police officers arrived at her parents' home to deliver the devastating news: their daughter had been found dead. The officers refrained from sharing the distressing details of how the identification of Jessica Manners was made, mentioning only that a family member had made a positive identification at the medical examiner's mortuary in Hauppauge that afternoon. Following this notification, the police focused on a series of investigative steps. Each step, though small, was part of a hopeful effort to piece together the various elements of the crime and solve the murder. The investigation gained momentum when Detective Sergeant Pepper and Detective White received the autopsy report from Dr. Stuart Dawson, Suffolk County's Deputy Chief Medical Examiner. The report concluded that Jessica died from strangulation and a severe blow to the head. It was noted that she had been dragged by her feet, and the impact to her head was so severe that it alone could have been fatal, even without the strangulation. Dr. Dawson could not determine if Jessica was strangled with her own bra or manually. The only detail he could provide was that her bra, which was not entirely ripped off, was the sole piece of clothing found with her body on the rocky shore. The critical question now facing the investigators was the location of Jessica's murder. Was she killed on Jeffrey Lane, where her other clothes were found, or did the crime occur elsewhere? The answer to this question was still unknown, as there were some complicating factors unfolding on Jeffrey Lane in Setauket, which had yet to come to the police's attention. The investigation into Jessica Manners' murder encountered a significant setback on the evening of Easter Sunday. Approximately 8 hours after an elderly citizen had placed garments he found on Jeffrey Lane next to a fence, the homeowner at that location noticed them and discarded them into the trash. The following morning, all the clothes, except for one sneaker that had not made it into the garbage can, were collected by a waste disposal service. That evening, after learning about Jessica's murder through a news broadcast, the homeowner realized the potential relevance of the discarded garments to the case. He quickly retrieved the remaining sneaker from his lawn and contacted the police. In response, Detective Sergeant Pepper dispatched homicide detectives to the area. They interviewed local residents who had seen the garments. While these individuals confirmed that the clothes matched the description of what Jessica was reportedly wearing the night she disappeared, none noticed any blood or other signs suggesting they belonged to a homicide victim. The detectives also spoke with the garbage truck workers who had collected the discarded items. However, it was too late to retrieve the clothing. They had already been disposed of at the Brookhaven town landfill, mixed with tons of other waste, and were not recovered due to the challenging and contaminating conditions. Detective Pepper commented on the situation, noting that the evidentiary value of the garments had been destroyed due to their handling by multiple people and contamination with other garbage. He stated that it would not be worthwhile to expend the resources necessary to locate the clothes in the landfill. This development represented a significant loss of potential evidence in the case. The investigation into Jessica Manor's murder did not yield significant results from further examination of the Setauket neighborhood. Detectives found no evidence suggesting that she was murdered there. Instead, attention shifted to Shore Road, particularly a bluff overlooking the water where her body was found, a spot that was often deserted and used as a lover's lane, especially on Saturday nights. A local resident provided a key piece of information. He reported seeing a pickup truck and a car parked on Shore Road between 11:45 p.m. and 2:30 a.m. on the night Jessica was presumed to have been murdered. However, he could not provide detailed descriptions of these vehicles, leaving the police with little to pursue in that direction. Nevertheless, the detectives pursued other avenues for clues. A significant lead emerged from the New York Telephone Company records. A phone call was made from the Manor's home just before midnight to a number outside the local dialing area. This number was traced to a residence on Media Lane in Stony Brook, where 19-year-old Christopher Lizio lived. Lizio, known to be an acquaintance of Jessica's and working as a landscape gardener, became a person of interest. Although the investigators' approach to Lizio was cautious and low-key, they interrogated him alongside many other friends of Jessica, including her peers from Robert C. Murphy Jr. High School. While Lizio's responses did not immediately raise alarms, they led the detectives to question whether he was completely forthcoming about his relationship with Jessica. This aspect of the investigation opened up new possibilities for inquiry, as law enforcement sought to understand the full extent of Lizio's connection to the victim. Christopher Lizio, a key figure in the investigation into Jessica Manor's murder, told detectives that he had not seen Jessica on the Saturday night she went missing. He explained that he learned about her call to his house only after returning home in the early hours of Sunday, by which time he considered it too late to return her call. However, inconsistencies in Lizio's story began to emerge after detectives spoke with others in the social circle shared by Jessica and Lizio. A crucial breakthrough came 17 days after Jessica's body was discovered, provided by a high school junior who lived near Lizio in Stony Brook. This witness recounted an encounter with Lizio on Easter Sunday morning. He saw Lizio sitting in his parked car near Sycamore Circle around 9:45 a.m. During their conversation, Lizio revealed that a girl had been killed on Shore Road, a location they both were familiar with. He mentioned seeing police and fire trucks in the area. Skeptical, the witness questioned how Lizio knew this information. Lizio responded that he had learned about the incident from a neighbor. This testimony raised questions about Lizio's account, particularly regarding his knowledge of the crime scene on Shore Road and the circumstances surrounding Jessica's death. It suggested that Lizio might have been aware of the incident earlier than he initially claimed, thereby casting doubt on his previous statements and potentially implicating him further in the ongoing investigation. The detectives interviewing Christopher Lizio's friend became aware that Lizio's account of being informed about the murder on Shore Road was highly unlikely. At the time the body was discovered at 9 a.m. and until it was taken to the mortuary at 2 p.m., only a limited number of individuals knew about the murder. These included Lawrence Perkins, who discovered the body, and the family of the educator who Perkins tried to prevent from seeing the corpse. The crime scene was swiftly cordoned off by the authorities, and access was strictly limited to law enforcement officials. This restriction meant that no one from the neighborhood or elsewhere could have been within 200 feet of the body, nor could they have known the nature of the police activity until later in the day. The statement provided by Lizio's friend contradicted this fact, raising significant doubts about Lizio's story. But this wasn't the only incriminating evidence detectives Pepper and White were gathering against Lizio. Another compelling piece of evidence emerged from one of Lizio's neighbors. The neighbor reported seeing Lizio early on the morning after Easter, around 7 a.m., engaged in an unusual activity. Lizio was cleaning the backseat and floor mats of his car, a 1987 white Pontiac Sunbird, but notably, he was not washing the exterior. The neighbor found this odd, especially given the early hour and the absence of other people. This observation was striking, suggesting that Lizio might have been trying to remove potentially incriminating evidence from his car. It was this testimony, combined with the information from the friend about their conversation on the morning of the discovery of Jessica's body, that solidified Lizio as the prime suspect in the murder of Jessica Manners. It provided the detectives with a compelling reason to intensify their focus on Lizio in their investigation. The investigation into Jessica Manners' murder took a significant turn with the follow-up report from Dr. Dawson, the medical examiner. The report included results from chemical analyses of the victim's vital organs and body fluids, revealing crucial evidence about the circumstances surrounding her death. Among the key findings was an analysis of semen found in Jessica's body. While the authorities made Dr. Dawson's conclusions public, they chose not to disclose to the press that Jessica had engaged in sexual activity. In his initial autopsy, Dr. Dawson had noted that there were no signs of trauma in the victim's genital area. However, he could not rule out the possibility of rape, suggesting it might have occurred after she was knocked out with the blow to the back of her head. The medical examiner's final report brought a disturbing revelation. It concluded that Jessica Manners was forcibly raped. Although there was no direct evidence of forceful rape, the presence of semen in her vagina indicated that sexual intercourse likely occurred after she had received what was deemed a fatal blow to the head. This conclusion from the medical examiner significantly influenced the direction of the investigation. It led the detectives to increasingly consider Christopher Lizio as a prime suspect in the murder of Jessica Manners. The evidence pointed towards a scenario where the sexual act occurred post-mortem or at least after Jessica was incapacitated, further deepening the mystery and the urgency to solve the case. Detective Pepper and White's investigation into Christopher Lizio, the prime suspect in the murder of Jessica Manners, progressed as they arranged a three-way conference call with Lizio and his lawyer. During this call, Lizio provided details about his relationship with the victim. Lizio acknowledged that he had only met Jessica Manners a month earlier at a bowling club. However, he firmly denied ever having sexual relations with her. Despite his statement, the detectives were not convinced of Lizio's innocence. In fact, his account further persuaded them of the need to take more decisive action against him. To move forward, Detectives Pepper and White consulted with Homicide Commander Lieutenant Jirash and then met with Timothy Motzi, an assistant district attorney in Suffolk County's Homicide Bureau. Together, they reviewed all the evidence amassed in the case. Several key pieces of evidence were considered. 1. The phone call made from the Manners home to the Lizio residence. 2. The testimony from Lizio's neighbor, who observed him cleaning the interior of his car early in the morning following Easter. 3. The account from Lizio's friend, who reported that Lizio had knowledge of the crime early on the morning it was discovered, before such information was publicly available. Additionally, they discussed information not yet released to the press, telephone records indicating that Jessica had made another phone call on the Saturday night before Easter, lasting from 11:30 p.m. to midnight. This new detail about the victim's activities on the night of her disappearance added another layer to the investigation, possibly linking Lizio more closely to the case. During his interrogation, Christopher Lizio provided conflicting accounts regarding his interactions with Jessica Manners on the night of her disappearance. Lizio initially claimed that he learned about Jessica's 12:15 a.m. call to his house only after returning home and being informed by a relative. However, he later told investigators that Jessica had called him at 11:45 p.m. that night, inviting him out. Lizio stated he declined the invitation, citing a prior commitment with another date. This assertion was contradicted by phone records, which showed that Jessica was engaged in a half-hour phone call with a different friend during that time, making it impossible for her to have called Lizio. Further complicating Lizio's account, his alleged date for that night, Nicole Vento, was interviewed by the police. Vento, a waitress, confirmed that she had plans with Lizio at an East Setauket restaurant at 10:30 p.m. that Saturday. She also encountered him later at a nearby party, where she observed him appearing intoxicated. Vento reported that Lizio left the party around 11 p.m., claiming he was going home. She verified this by driving past his house shortly thereafter and seeing his car in the driveway. However, around 12:10 a.m., while driving in the opposite direction from Stony Brook, Vento noticed a car resembling Lizio's heading in the direction between his house and Jessica's location. Vento disclosed a crucial piece of information to the police. Lizio had visited her on the Monday night following Easter, requesting her to provide him with an alibi. He admitted to knowing Jessica, having met her at a bowling alley a few weeks prior, and was aware that Vento was alone on the night of Jessica's murder. Lizio specifically asked Vento to claim that they were together that night, further implicating him in the case and raising serious questions about his involvement in Jessica Manners' murder. Nicole Vento, Christopher Lizio's girlfriend at the time, provided crucial testimony to the police, revealing Lizio's apprehensions and attempts to manipulate her into providing him with a false alibi. She reported that Lizio expressed fear that detectives would uncover his communication with Jessica Manners once they reviewed the phone records from Jessica's family home. Lizio persistently pressured Vento to maintain the fabricated story, emphasizing the importance of her adherence to the false narrative if questioned by the police. He went to extreme lengths in his attempts to secure her cooperation, threatening to harm himself if she did not comply with his requests. Furthermore, Lizio promised to take care of her if she agreed to lie on his behalf. Despite Lizio's efforts to influence her, Vento did not intend to provide him with an alibi. Instead, she chose to fully cooperate with the authorities during her interrogation, demonstrating a willingness to support the investigation and providing critical information that further implicated Lizio in the murder of Jessica Manners. A 13-year-old acquaintance of Jessica Manners contacted the police on March 27, the Monday following Easter, with a significant piece of information. She reported that Jessica had told her about plans to meet her 18 or 19-year-old boyfriend at a lake in Setauket on the Saturday night she disappeared. This revelation was seen as a crucial piece of evidence by Assistant District Attorney Timothy Motzi. However, he acknowledged that more investigative work was needed before an arrest could be made and the case could be presented to a grand jury for a murder indictment. In pursuit of further evidence, the police continued their investigation. By mid-April, Christopher Lizio was brought back to police headquarters for further questioning. This time, accompanied by a lawyer, Lizio firmly refused to consent to a blood test that the police suggested could help clear his name. The situation escalated when a New York State Supreme Court justice issued an order in early June, demanding Lizio submit to the blood test. Lizio's response was even more resolute, a categorical refusal. This refusal led to a prolonged legal battle that spanned 5 months. Lizio consistently lost in legal confrontations as the case progressed through the judicial system. It moved from the Supreme Court circuit to the Appellate Division, the second highest court in the state, and eventually reached the Court of Appeals in Albany, the highest judicial authority in New York State. The investigation took a significant turn when Christopher Lizio was finally ordered to provide a blood sample, which he did in September. This sample was sent to the FBI in Washington, D.C., for genetic testing, with the goal of determining whether Lizio's DNA matched the semen found in Jessica's body. The DNA analysis yielded a startling discovery: there were 2 distinct sets of DNA on and in Jessica's body. One matched Lizio's DNA, but the other set remained unidentified, adding another layer of complexity to the case. Further investigative efforts included executing a search warrant on Lizio's car on April 20th. During this search, police recovered a shirt containing head hair that matched Jessica's. Fibers from the car's floor were also collected and later found to be consistent with synthetic fibers from Jessica's shirt. A critical piece of evidence emerged when Lizio's blood was compared with the semen recovered from Jessica's body. The DNA from both sources matched, with a prosecution expert testifying that the likelihood of such a match occurring by coincidence was 1 in 25 million. However, the fibers found in Lizio's car did not match the fibers discovered under Jessica's fingernails, presenting a partial inconsistency in the evidence. While the blood sample underwent analysis at the FBI lab, the investigation continued. Detectives re-interviewed acquaintances and friends of both Jessica and Lizio, seeking additional details to strengthen the case against Lizio. On December 11, 1989, Detective Lieutenant Jirash and Assistant District Attorney Motzi traveled to Washington, D.C. to meet with FBI agents regarding the investigation into Jessica Manner's murder. The FBI had completed the tests on the blood and semen samples related to Christopher Lizio and Jessica's body. The results of the DNA analysis were pivotal. As reported by Detective Lieutenant Jirash, the DNA conclusively linked Lizio to Jessica, providing the necessary evidence to justify an arrest. Armed with these findings, Jirash and Motzi returned to Long Island, where the final preparations for Lizio's arrest were swiftly put into motion. Only a few hours separated their return from the culmination of the long and intricate investigation. On the morning of December 13th, Detective Sergeant Pepper, Detective White, and other officers from the Suffolk County Police Department departed from their headquarters in Yaphank. They drove in unmarked police vehicles to Media Lane and Stony Brook, where they set up a stakeout near Lizio's residence. Shortly before 8 a.m., Lizio and a family member exited the house and got into a 1985 Buick. With the family member driving, they began their journey towards Port Jefferson, completely unaware that they were being followed by the detectives. As Christopher Lizio's car traveled along Route 347 in Setauket and neared Pond Road, the unmarked police cars trailing him activated their red lights and sirens, signaling for the Buick to pull over. Complying with the signal, the Buick stopped, and at that moment, the police officers made their move, arresting Lizio. Lizio was then taken to the police headquarters in Yaphank, where he underwent the standard booking procedures, including fingerprinting. He was charged with rape and second-degree murder. Following this, Lizio was transferred to the 6th Precinct and placed in a cell, where he would remain until his arraignment the following morning at the 1st District Court in Hauppauge. However, the arraignment in Judge Sidney K. Mitchell's courtroom turned chaotic with shouts, accusations, and charges echoing through the room. This tumultuous atmosphere followed an incident outside the courthouse where, in response to a reporter's question about his feelings, Lizio despairingly exclaimed, "I'm gonna lose. I'm gonna lose." Rushed into the courthouse before he could say more, Lizio's demeanor grew increasingly grim during his arraignment. He vehemently disagreed with the statements being made by prosecutor Timothy Motzi to Judge Mitchell. Motzi requested that Lizio be held without bail, citing threats he had allegedly made to the police. During the arraignment of Christopher Lizio, his attorney, Paul Giannelli, vehemently contested the allegations made by prosecutor Timothy Motzi regarding threats Lizio allegedly made to a detective. Motzi, citing his notes, quoted Lizio as making personal threats to the detective, including references to the officer's family and a vow to seek revenge and jeopardize the detective's job. Lizio's reaction to these allegations was one of denial. He appeared shocked and whispered to a family member, insisting that he had not made those statements. His attorney, Giannelli, then raised his own accusations against the police. He claimed that Lizio, who suffered from asthma, was mistreated in custody, alleging that the police had denied him access to his personal doctor despite his family's concerns for his health. Prosecutor Motzi refuted these claims of mistreatment, stating that there was no abuse by the police. He explained that any delay in Lizio's booking process was not due to mistreatment but because Lizio was uncooperative with the detectives. Despite the heated exchanges and allegations in the courtroom, the judge ultimately decided to remand Lizio to the county jail in Riverhead without bail. However, the situation soon changed as Lizio's family managed to post a substantial bail amount, securing his release and allowing him to experience freedom once again, albeit temporarily and under the cloud of serious criminal charges. On October 14, 1990, the trial of Christopher Lizio for the rape and murder of Jessica Manners commenced in the courtroom of Suffolk County Judge Charles F. Cacciabato in Riverhead. Lizio, having been released on bail, was present to face the charges against him. Judge Cacciabato established clear guidelines for the conduct of the trial from the outset. He prohibited television cameras in the courtroom, although he allowed photographs of witnesses and other trial participants. The jury selection process was remarkably efficient, taking only 2 days to complete from a pool of 250 potential jurors. This expeditious selection resulted in a jury comprising 6 men and 6 women, paving the way for the trial's opening statements. Assistant District Attorney Michael Ahern replaced Timothy Motzi as the lead prosecutor for the trial. In his initial address to the jury, Ahern underscored a key point in the prosecution's case: Lizio's knowledge of Jessica Manners' murder on the morning her body was found, before it was public knowledge, suggested his direct involvement. Ahern argued that the only people present at the crime scene when the body was discovered were those who arrived with the police, and Lizio was not among them. In his opening statement, Lizio's attorney, Paul Giannelli, revealed a crucial aspect of his defense strategy. He acknowledged that Christopher Lizio had engaged in intimate sexual contact with Jessica Manners on the night in question, but he emphasized that this admission only established a sexual encounter, not culpability for her murder. Giannelli sought to evoke empathy by asking the jury to consider the overwhelming fear and terror a 19-year-old might experience upon learning of Jessica's death, suggesting that Lizio's actions post-discovery were driven by panic rather than guilt. The trial proceeded with few unexpected developments. Lizio's girlfriend reiterated her earlier statements to the police before the jury, maintaining consistency in her account. However, the prosecution introduced a new witness, a 19-year-old girl, who provided potentially damaging testimony against Lizio. She claimed to have noticed scratches on his arms, from his elbows to his wrists, while bowling with him 3 days after the murder. This testimony was, however, challenged by Nicole Vento, who did not recall seeing any cuts or scratches on Lizio when she saw him the day after the murder. Additionally, another witness testified about observing Lizio with an uneven haircut and clumps of hair missing, as well as wearing glasses, which was uncharacteristic for him. The prosecution seized on this testimony to suggest that Lizio had attempted to alter his appearance following the murder, potentially as a means to evade recognition and subsequent arrest. During the trial, Detective White, the lead investigator, shared a notable piece of information. He mentioned that a woman had approached the police shortly after the murder, claiming her boyfriend confessed to killing Jessica Manners, not Christopher Lizio. However, this claim was later retracted by the woman, who admitted she didn't believe her boyfriend's confession. Detective White's cross-examination by the defense counsel revealed another intriguing aspect. A jailhouse informant had reportedly told Detective White that Lizio confessed to killing Jessica Manor. The detective had subjected the informant to a polygraph test, but when asked if the informant failed the test, the court sustained an objection from the prosecution, leaving the question unanswered. Detective Sergeant Pepper introduced additional evidence. He testified that Jessica's bra was damp when her body was found, suggesting that her body was discarded at the harbor shore around the high tide, which occurred at 1:10 a.m. This timeline coincided with the estimated time of Jessica's rape and murder. As the trial progressed, it was revealed that Jessica Manners had been in a relationship and subsequently had a falling out with a 21-year-old man. The defense attorney emphasized this point, suggesting that the police had once considered this individual a suspect in the murder. This line of defense aimed to introduce doubt about Lizio's guilt by indicating that there might have been other potential suspects. However, the prosecution refuted this argument, asserting that there was no substantial evidence linking Jessica's ex-boyfriend to the crime. They maintained their stance that Christopher Lizio was the actual perpetrator of the murder, focusing on the evidence they believed firmly established his guilt. During the jury deliberations in Christopher Lizio's trial, an unexpected issue arose. On the evening of November 17, 1990, two jurors, Wolford and Kelly, sent a note to the trial judge. In the note, they reported that during the heat of deliberations, two unsubstantiated rumors, one about Lizio and the other about the deceased, Jessica Manners, were mentioned. They clarified that all jurors agreed these rumors would not bias their decision-making process, but they felt it was important to bring this matter to the court's attention. The trial judge took immediate action to address this issue. He interrogated jurors Wolford and Kelly about the rumors. Kelly indicated that only she and Wolford were aware of these rumors, while Wolford mentioned that a couple of other jurors had also heard them and that they originated from a juror other than themselves. The judge instructed Wolford and Kelly not to discuss this matter further with the other jurors. The next morning, after considering the jurors' assurances that the rumors would not affect their impartiality, the judge decided not to take any further action regarding this issue. Deliberations continued without further interruption from this matter. On November 20th, after days of deliberation, the jury in Christopher Lizio's trial reached a verdict. Lizio was found guilty on 2 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of first-degree rape. The announcement of this verdict in the courtroom was met with immediate and emotional reactions from Lizio's relatives. They expressed their disbelief and outrage, with exclamations of "No! No!" and accusations that the jury had been influenced or bought. Amidst this turmoil, one of Lizio's relatives reached out to him, expressing dismay and confusion over the jury's decision. Following the reading of the verdict, the trial court took the step of individually questioning each of the 12 jurors about the rumors that had been mentioned during the deliberations. This was likely done to ensure that the verdict was reached impartially and without undue influence from external or unsubstantiated information. Juror Wolford provided a response to the court's inquiry. He clarified that he had only partially heard a rumor related to allegations of unlawful imprisonment concerning Lizio. He was unsure how many of the jurors had heard this rumor, as it was mentioned at one end of the deliberation table amidst ongoing discussions. Both he and Kelly, another juror, felt it was important to bring this issue to the court's attention, reflecting their commitment to a fair and unbiased deliberation process. The trial court took further steps to address the issue of rumors mentioned during jury deliberations. This was a crucial step to ensure that the verdict was based solely on the evidence presented in court and not influenced by extraneous or unverified information. Each juror was individually questioned about their awareness of any rumors and the impact of such rumors on their decision-making process. The responses revealed that various rumors had circulated among the jury members. One rumor was about the victim, Jessica Manners, being a prostitute, while another suggested that Lizio had previously been arrested for a similar crime but was never convicted. Another juror heard that Lizio had been in trouble before and that Manners was promiscuous. Similar sentiments were echoed by other jurors, with several of them hearing that the victim was promiscuous. Despite these revelations, when asked if these rumors influenced their decision in any way, each juror responded negatively. They affirmed that their verdict was not swayed by these unsubstantiated rumors, indicating that their decision was based on the evidence and testimonies presented during the trial. Nearly 2 years after the murder of Jessica Manners, Christopher Lizio faced the legal consequences of his actions. On January 17, 1991, Judge Cacciabato sentenced him to the maximum penalty available, 25 years to life in prison. This sentencing reflected the severity of the crimes for which Lizio was convicted: second-degree murder and first-degree rape. In July 1992, Lizio sought a new trial under New York Criminal Procedure Law 440.10, citing newly discovered evidence. This evidence pertained to a scientific test of the salinity content of Jessica's bra, which, according to Lizio, indicated that her body had not been submerged in seawater at any point. He argued that this contradicted the prosecution's expert witness testimony at the trial, which had suggested that Jessica's body was placed at Scott's Cove around 2:50 a.m. Lizio contended that since he had returned home by approximately 1:15 a.m., this new evidence proved his innocence. However, the county court denied his motion for a new trial, reasoning that this evidence could have been discovered before the trial with reasonable effort. In 1997, Lizio filed a second motion under Section 440.10, alleging that his counsel had been ineffective. He claimed his attorney failed to adequately challenge Detective White's testimony regarding an alleged jailhouse confession and also neglected to perform a salinity test on the victim's bra. The county court denied this motion as well, concluding that Lizio had received meaningful representation during his trial. In April 1997, Christopher Lizio filed a habeas corpus petition in federal district court, continuing his legal battle to challenge his conviction. The district court decided to hold an evidentiary hearing focused on Lizio's claims of ineffective assistance from his counsel, Paul Ginelli. At this hearing, Ginelli was the sole witness. He explained his strategy regarding Detective White's testimony about the alleged jailhouse confession. Ginelli aimed to portray the prosecution's case as weak, suggesting their reliance on jailhouse informants indicated a lack of solid evidence against Lizio. Regarding the failure to conduct a salinity test on Jessica's bra, Ginelli admitted that the idea did not occur to him. Instead, he relied on the jury's direct observation of the bra to determine that it had not been submerged in seawater. On March 2, 2000, the district court heard oral arguments on Lizio's claims, including the ineffective assistance by his counsel and the allegation that his Sixth Amendment rights were violated due to the jury's consideration of rumors about his past behavior. On September 11, 2000, the district court issued an oral opinion denying Lizio's petition. However, it granted a certificate of appealability for the Sixth Amendment claim and the two ineffective assistance claims, allowing Lizio to pursue an appeal. This ongoing legal process underscores the complexities and challenges of post-conviction appeals, particularly in cases involving claims of ineffective assistance and potential juror biases. Despite these efforts, a lingering question remains unresolved. What about the other set of DNA found in Jessica Manners' body that hadn't been identified? Thanks for joining us in unraveling the complex case of Jessica Manners. Hit subscribe for more intriguing true crime tales and share your thoughts below.